Listen up.
Welcome back to the Jake Asman Show. Time now for some quick hits.
We gotta move quickly.
There's no time. Move fast there. Come on.
And here we go on a Thursday installment of America's favorite sports talk radio segment. It is time for Quick Hits right here on the Jake Asman Show. And Quick Hits this morning is brought to you by Freol Deep Penetrating Oil. Industrial strength Freol spreads deep into rusted or frozen parts, freeing them with ease. The 3-part formula delivers 3 times more lubricant. It takes less spray, less torque, and less time than any other penetrating oil to get the job done. Freol is also body shop safe, which means it's safe on paint, plastic parts, and is silicone free. You can find Freol on the shelves at any AutoZone, O'Reilly, or Napa Auto Parts store, and also at select Walmart stores. We begin Quick Hits by talking about what has been just a wild 48 hours for the New York Rangers. We'll get to what they did off the ice yesterday, but first, Rangers and Capitals meet for the second time, back-to-back. First time, of course, since Tom Wilson and his dirty tuchus wasn't suspended by the league. So it didn't take too long for Brendan Smith of the Rangers to take matters into his own hands during Wilson's first shift in the game last night.
Brendan Smith goes right after Wilson.
Yep.
It did not take long, Pierre.
Nope. He showed it in the warm-up, Brendan Smith, and he knew. He's hanging in there real well against an unbelievable heavyweight in Tom Wilson.
He certainly is. So 3 fights simultaneously right at the start, and now 50 seconds in, Wilson's first shift.
The game featured 6 fights in the first 5 minutes, 100 penalty minutes. I mean, this was just absurd. It's a joke that Tom Wilson wasn't suspended by the NHL, and this is what happens when you don't suspend him. You make a mockery of the game with all these fights. It's so stupid that the NHL did not punish Wilson. They just fined him. They don't take into account this guy is a repeat offender. And you know what? Because they don't suspend him, he continues to get away with it. And believe me, I am no Ranger fan, but they were absolutely hosed by this whole thing. I actually had no issue with the statement that the Rangers put out, basically calling for the guy, George Soros, who oversees this whole thing, to lose his job because he's unfit for the role. I mean, to fine Wilson and not even suspend him is a joke.
And what was he fined? Like $5,000?
$5,000, which is the maximum amount they're allowed to fine.
$5,000.
Ooh, a whopping $5,000. He probably, wipes his tuchus with $5,000. Disgusting. I mean, give me a break. It's just terrible. No Ranger fan, but the way this whole thing has been handled, it's been terrible. And I mean, he's such a punk, man. He shouldn't be allowed to play for the Capitals in the playoffs. It's a joke. NHL just dropped the ball here. Awful. And then, let's hear from Brendan Smith first. Then we'll get to what the Rangers did before this game even occurred. This was Brendan Smith on fighting Wilson during his first shift.
Obviously, you guys watched what happened the game before. I don't really want to touch on it too much. I think it's been exhausted already. But I think that I had no beef with anybody else on their team. I thought that it should have been handled before this game, and it wasn't. So, unfortunately, it had to be kind of on my shoulders, and I thought I took it.
I mean, shame on the NHL. Shame on the NHL. It makes no sense how that guy was allowed to play in that game last night. Makes absolutely no sense. Also, what makes no sense is the Rangers before the game yesterday, and this came out of nowhere. Nobody in New York saw this coming. They fired their general manager and their team president. Jeff Gorton, the GM, John Davidson, the president. And I don't have a reason as to why James Dolan, you remember, people, he owns the Rangers too, why he would do this. The Rangers, yes, have they maybe underperformed a little bit this year? Okay, yeah. But they have a really good young core. They've been rebuilding the team the last couple of years. They have some really good players that just need more development. They'd be in the playoffs if they were in another division in the NHL this year. They just happen to be in the most difficult division in the league, where you have the Islanders, the Bruins, the Penguins, and the Capitals. So the Rangers, to me, were on the right track. They were a team that it was the youngest in the league. They were on the rise. Adam Fox is having a breakout year. They have, obviously, Panarin. They have good young players that had the first pick in the draft the last 2 years, winning the lottery. Like, the Rangers are not a bad team by any stretch. And a lot of people thought Dolan meddled and fired Gorton and Davidson because they weren't on board with the statement that the Rangers put out eviscerating the NHL for not suspending Tom Wilson. But the thing is, apparently it's just a coincidence that Dolan fired them. Dolan wasn't happy with the direction of the team. Maybe losing twice to the Islanders last week was the final straw for the Dolan to do something. But Dolan doesn't meddle much with the Rangers. That's one thing you could say about his ownership. He has interfered with the Knicks far more over 20 years than he has with the Rangers. The Rangers have been actually one of the more successful teams in the league over the last 20 years. But to me, this came out of nowhere. It makes no sense. And now Chris Jury goes from being the intern or the assistant GM to a guy that's now the head GM. And David Quinn, the head coach of the Rangers, his job is in flux right now. You have to think that he could get fired after the year ends. Rangers got 2 games left now. So Quinn could be on the way out. And he was asked last night about his job security.
We talked all day for that. And for the most part. And, we never touched on that yet. We talked about a variety of different things moving forward here. So, obviously at the right time, myself, Chris, and Mr. Dolan will certainly sit down and talk about every aspect of the organization, and coaching will be one of them.
Man, how does this just happen, though? Like, you really had, if you're Dolan and you're in the midst of this Tom Wilson situation, why did you need to fire those guys right now? This couldn't have waited till after the season. The season's over on Saturday for the Rangers. This couldn't have waited. What was the rush?
It is bizarre. I get coach fires. Usually it's on a Black Monday. It's what tradition is, especially in that NFL. I guess if he already has a guy in place, he just hasn't announced it yet. Kind of like what the Washington football team did, getting rid of Jay Gruden, and they already had Ron Rivera pegged to be the next coach. I don't get it either. I don't know why. Why now? Why wait? Why in the middle of the most highly profiled series in the NHL right now, when everyone was tuned in to watch what was going to happen between the Rangers and Capitals, and none of us were disappointed within the first second of the game.
3 games left. Just wait. Dolan always has to make himself involved in the storyline for no reason. You just do nothing. And you know what was funny? People were throwing out the Knicks' success as a reason why Dolan made a move. He's like, well, I don't want to be patient anymore. Like the Knicks turned it around when the second I hired a good coach and GM. I want to do the same thing for the Rangers. And it's like, you can't compare the two teams. But Dolan doesn't think rationally a lot of times. And that's the problem when the owner has this much power. So I feel for you fellow Knick and Ranger fans, because it's bad enough you got to deal with Dolan for one of your teams. There's many of you that got to deal with Dolan for 2 of your teams.
Who on the Knicks will get fired next?
I hope nobody. Listen, the Knicks need to do nothing but just let Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose continue to build the team the right way. Terrible. And
Dolan will mess it up.
Probably. That's my fear. Just let him. Just don't do anything. Let Leon and let Tibbs do everything else, and the Knicks will be fine. Even though they lost last night.
All right. Question. Okay. It's a little off topic, but question for you. Do you want Dolan to lift a trophy?
Yes, because it means that my team would have won. So yes, I can deal with it.
You can deal with it?
I could deal with it. I just want to win.
Even though he might take all the credit for it and make it all about him.
He wouldn't though. He doesn't public speak ever. He hides. Dolan never does interviews. He's scared. It's just he wouldn't say anything. I would love though if the Knicks won a championship. I would not care in the slightest that Dolan would benefit. Wouldn't care. I just want to see that more than anything. Like if the Jets won the Super Bowl.
I got to throw that out there. The public wants to know.
I get it. I'm just telling you, like if the Jets won a Super Bowl, I'm not a fan at all of, the Johnson brothers, specifically Chris, who hired Adam Gase. But I mean, if they won, I'd be all in because I like Joe Douglas. I like Robert Saleh. I just want to win, man.
You have no problems with the Johnson brothers holding up the trophy, making it all about them.
I have problems with the Johnson vaccine, which I told you about for months. And guess who was right about that one? And this guy. Told you, don't trust anything the Johnson & Johnson brothers do. So you want to know why Johnson & Johnson was pulled? Look no further than the name. I rest my case. And Jets82 writes it on YouTube. I heard the Rangers fired those guys because they butted heads on the Wilson issue, and then Dolan's Napoleon complex took over. It's possible. I'm sure that maybe played a part. I also think Dolan just became very impatient with the fact the Rangers are missing the playoffs, and he thinks they were good enough to be a playoff team. And he's not necessarily wrong, but I would say to Dolan, you're in a tough division. You dealt with a lot of COVID issues this year, injuries. Artemi Panarin was dealing with, Vladimir Putin coming down on him from Russia. So, look, not a good year, but I didn't think Gorton or Davidson should have been fired. To baseball now. Baltimore 6, Seattle nothing. That's not the story, though. The story is what the lefty, John Means, did on the mound.
So it comes down to J.P. Crawford. First pitch swinging, line drive, he's done it. John Means has no-hit the Mariners, and the Orioles mob him. The first no-hitter for the Orioles in 30 years. The first complete game no-hitter since Jim Palmer did it 52 years ago in 1969.
The call there on Mason. Here's the thing, though. This should have been a perfect game. The perfect game was lost because of a dropped third strikeout that got to the backstop, and the runner reached at first base. That was the only blemish, if you want to call it that, in this game. So John Means threw a no-hitter, but he really threw a perfect game, if you think about it.
And he only faced 27 batters, even with that.
Right, because the runner on first, I believe, was caught stealing, right?
Got caught stealing. So he faced the minimum amount of batters one could face.
To me, that's a perfect game.
God, that's got to be gut-wrenching.
Now, Means was asked about that. So, Ron, asked your question to John Means.
Yeah.
Was it gut-wrenching?
Was it gut-wrenching that you lost the perfect game? I think it was in the third inning, that pass ball.
Here's John Means.
It's fine. It happens to everybody. It's not a big deal, and I'm just happy that I got through. Honestly, I'm happy I went complete game. I was stuck in the seventh inning. That's the farthest I've gone so far. So to be able to go eighth and ninth I was happy with that. But to get a good no-hitter, I could care less that it wasn't a perfect game.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Here's the thing. For him to be like it happens to everybody, no, it doesn't. How many people?
Okay.
How many people have a no-hitter taken away or a perfect game taken away because of a dropped third strike?
You and I will concede to this. When he said this soundbite last night, I'm sure he's fine. He got a no-hitter. No-hitters are rare in baseball. Today, maybe not today. Maybe it's Friday. Maybe it's next week at this time when everyone's saying, "Hey, this time last week you threw a no-hitter." He's going to start thinking about that perfect game and about that one pitch.
Actually, I threw
one pitch that got away
game.
from him.
How many perfect games have there been in MLB history?
I think it's under 30.
It's under 30, I believe. I think it's like 22 or 23.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in a no-hitter and a perfect game. And he basically threw the perfect game, but doesn't get credit for it. That's tough.
Well, no, he let one pitch get away from him.
Debatable.
Either him or the catcher?
Yeah.
Is that where you're going with it?
Maybe the catcher could have bailed him out there. I don't know.
Well, it's early in the game. You don't have to play that hard. You don't know the stakes.
I get it. But, man, John Means. Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
And can we add Armando Galarraga to the perfect game list?
You know my thoughts on that.
Yep.
Absolutely. It was the last play of the game. It did not affect any outcome. Like, the game was over. The proper call was made. He threw a perfect game and should get credit for it. But nope, baseball won't do it.
Yeah. That has no effect on the season. There's no effect on future records.
You could definitively say it was the last play of the game. The call is made. Game's over.
Yeah.
Instead,
wasn't like it gives the Tigers the win. They won anyways.
No, it was over. Like that, you could definitively say right call's made and it's over. And they didn't do it.
Yep.
So there you go. All right, the baseball. Dodgers, all of a sudden, in some trouble, Ron. Cubs beat the Dodgers again yesterday, 6-5.
You messed up on the word. They swept.
What did I say?
They beat. They swept the Dodgers.
Well, I was going to say the Cubs beat the Dodgers, and they have now swept them.
Okay. I was jumping the gun there because it stinks.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be mean.
It stinks.
I don't mean to be mean. But the Dodgers have been swept now for the first time in 2 years. This just doesn't happen. So the Dodgers go down to the Cubs. They lose, obviously, all 3 games of the series. And, you look at the Dodgers record. They were, 11-2? They were, just cruising. Now, all of a sudden.
I had my feet up on the desk.
Ron was relaxed every
I
morning.
didn't care about them playing.
17-15 now, Ron. 2-8 in their last 10 and losers of 3 straight. Are you worried?
I'm not hitting that, that gigantic red panic button yet, but I've brought it closer to me. If that's any consolation, or I've moved closer to it. I don't know which way you want to go with it. I'm not breaking the glass on the emergency axe just yet, but I've picked up the hammer to do so.
I think you guys will be fine. Every team goes through it, but
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
It is, but when the Dodgers started 11-2 following the World Series, I'm like, man, this team might actually challenge the Yankees and Mariners, those teams from 98 and 2001.
Yeah.
For the most wins ever in a regular season. That's how good they were.
And it still could happen. I mean, there's a few injuries here and there. I mean, we got some pitchers on the disabled list that we don't want to be on the not disabled. What is it? Injured list now? IL, not DL, whatever. We got some players hurt. One is gone for the season. So maybe when they all come back, it'll be right the ship. And listen, all we got to do is make the playoffs, right?
Just get in, right?
But I mean,
you might want to win that division so you get.
But then we got to. I was worried about the Padres. Now we're looking up at the Giants.
Yeah, the Giants are right now 18 and 13. Padres 18 and 14. Dodgers third place 17. And 15.
Yeah,
crazy.
Why are we looking up?
Crazy. Look up. Your neck's gonna hurt from looking up. We'll get the tone of the Russa in the next segment. Here is Dave Roberts, though. He's asked, how frustrating is it that his team continues to lose?
Yeah, I think we're all frustrated. You play to win, and we have high expectations for ourselves. So when you don't play good baseball and you don't win baseball games, it's frustrating for everyone. Absolutely.
Well said, Dave. Thank you for that. That wraps it up for Quick Hits here on a Thursday morning. Coming up next, Tony La Russa. You forgot the rules. I'll tell you what we mean by that in the next segment. Stay tuned. We're coming right back. Jake Asman with you here on a Thursday on Sports Map Radio.